My name is Nino Akwete. I'll be your facilitator for today. Just a few announcements before we start. Voting is open for for our executive board. So if you're a member, you should have received a link to vote for your preferred candidate. And if you've not received the link, please let me reach out to nationalcapital@itecanada.org and we'll send you a link. Sorry, can you please mute your... Thank you. Nominations are open for our MCAN Lifetime Achievement Award and the Project of the Year Award. Deadline is 31st. You can submit your nominations on our page. And we have an AGM coming up soon, and we'll be announcing in our newsletter. So please watch out and attend if you're able to. So before we start, a few housekeeping rules. This webinar will be recorded, and please keep your microphones muted during the entire presentations. Put your questions in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat for a Q&A session after the presentation. Yeah. And Suzanne and Geoff will be able to answer those questions after then. So just moving on to the presenters. So we have Suzanne and Geoff here today. Suzanne is a professional engineer and an independent consultant. She's a co-chair of the TAC Vision Zero and Safe System Approach Subcommittee. She's also a former lead of the Road Safety Engineering team in City of Ottawa, and she has been involved in over 15 road safety audits since 2022. Geoff Ho is a professional engineer and president of the Geo Engineering Consultants. He's a co-author of the TAC Canadian Road Safety Audit Guide. He has over 30 years of experience and has been involved in over 600 road safety audit projects. He recently received the TAC Distinguished Service Award. So thanks Suzanne and Geoff for this presentation today. I'll just hand it over to you, Suzanne.
Thanks, Ninoy. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. This is always the moment. Share window. Here. Share. And is it working?
Yeah, I can see your screen. Yeah.
Okay. So thanks everybody for joining us. And today we're going to talk about what are road safety audits and why do we need to do them. And we already got the intros done, so that's great. Thank you. Here are some of the recent projects that we've worked on. So just you guys can read this yourselves, but lots of projects all over the West. So rapid bus projects and bridge replacements. And right now I'm doing a diverging diamond interchange. So lots of fun stuff. This is the agenda for our presentation. So we've gotten through the introduction. We're going to talk about why do we do road safety audits and what is a road safety audit. And then we'll talk about the RSA process, and there's going to be time for questions. And then if there's still time, we'll go through some examples. So why do we do road safety audits? The obvious thing is we want to avoid this. In Ottawa, the City of Ottawa, there's 20 to 30 fatalities per year. And Canada-wide, there were over 1,700 fatalities in 2022, which is the last year that we have data for. So for people under the age of 40, it's the most likely way to die, and this includes children. So driving is a high-risk activity and based upon exposure because we do it a lot. And the government is really excited to help us try and reduce the road tolls. So we have Canada's Road Safety Strategy 2025, and that's a long-term vision towards zero, the safest roads in the world. And the road safety audits is one of the inventory of road safety measures in the road safety strategy. And then we have in this corner, Think Safety, Act Safely. That's the branding for Ottawa's Road Safety Action Plan. And also part of Ottawa's plan is road safety audits. And so that's why we're doing them. And this is just a screenshot that I took from the FHWA. Just a reminder that road safety audits aren't only done in Canada, but they are done internationally. And countries like Australia and the UK have been doing them for much longer than Canada. And here I just wanted to also highlight, so here's the link, you can go look this up yourselves, but the safety benefit is pretty significant. So this is another reason why we do them. And then everybody already knows this, but why do crashes happen? This is the Swiss cheese model, and we're trying to get as many slices of Swiss cheese as we can in there to stop the crash. So the risk turning into an actual crash. And yeah, unfortunately, sometimes the holes line up and that would be considered the perfect storm, and then you have a crash. And here's another more engineering way to look at it. This is the collision chain. So here we have in blue with the H's, the human elements, and then the road elements and the vehicle elements. So all of these things together have the potential to result in a crash. And again, so it's we're kind of expressing how there are lots of different contributing factors to crashes. And unfortunately, when they add up, they can turn into disaster. So why do we need RSAs? I guess the first thing to talk about is that the design process is very, very complex. There's a lot of competing interests and a lot of things that designers need to consider when they're putting together their designs. And this is all happening in 3D, which just adds that other level of complexity. So we recognize that compromises and trade-offs are a normal part of the planning and design decision-making process. RSAs are intended to demonstrate the safety implications of design decisions and to ensure that safety is an explicit consideration and that safety does not fall through the cracks. So hopefully breaking the collision chain. And I'll hand it over to Geoff now to talk about what is a road safety audit.
Thanks, Suzanne. Yeah, just going back to the previous slide, we will have some examples towards the end just to show you how things do fall through the crack, and it always happens. And I think I could say there are always things to improve in the design or on any transportation project of the, I don't know, 600 plus RSAs that I've done through the years. I think I've written one report where we did not find anything of significance. All the rest, there are always safety issues or enhancement that one could do to improve the safety of the project. Anyways, in Canada, we follow the TAC Canadian Road Safety Audit Guide that was published back in 2001. I think this guide will probably need to be updated soon, but a lot of things that are in there are still valid today. But things have also changed a little bit given the Vision Zero and Safe System approach. Now, the definition, next page, please, Suzanne. This is the definition given in the TAC guide. You could see some of the things that are underlined. That makes a road safety audit different than just asking your colleague who's sitting next to you and say, hey, can you take a look at my design and see if you find anything that's a showstopper or anything that I could actually change. So it's actually a formal and independent safety performance review of a road transportation project by an experienced team of safety specialists that addresses the safety of all road users. And the important things are those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. So next, please. First of all, it's formal. So there is actually a standard procedure and documentation so that there's a record of an RSA or multiple RSAs being done on a project. Second of all, it's independent. It's a third-party look at the project from a safety point of view, and they should not be part of the design team because in the past we have design reviews and other stakeholders reviews, but they are focusing on all different areas of the projects rather than just being safety focused, which is the third point. Now, it should be done by an experienced RSA team. Throughout the years, a lot of people ask me, well, how do you do a road safety audit? My best answer would be, well, for myself, I started doing well, in the old days, they call it the black spot accident investigation, or what they're calling it now, the in-surface road safety reviews. So you go through enough of those where you are looking at collision-prone locations, why certain types of crashes are happening, either relating to traffic operations or geometric design or weather or road users. You start building up your experience and your knowledge, and also, reading a lot of the latest research and publications, going to conferences, seeing what other people are doing, as well as doing the audit work. And, Suzanne and I have worked together for a long time, and I still tell her that, hey, you know what, every time I look at a road safety audit, I still learn something new every day. So it's an experience and knowledge-based type of work. And the last, and I think it's the most important part of an RSA is, and then things are improving over time too, because before we used to focus mostly on the motorists and motor vehicles. And RSA do actually look at all the road users involved. For example, there are certain projects that involve, say, farm vehicles on the road, or equestrians on the road, and for sure, pedestrians and cyclists, the more vulnerable road users. Actually, last night I just came across an article on motorcycle safety audits, so that was quite interesting. Anyways, so these are the definition of what makes a road safety audit, quote unquote, special, rather than getting your colleague to have a quick look. Next, please.
I moved ahead already.
Yeah, okay. So these are some of the objectives. And like I said, things have changed a little bit with Vision Zero being the flavor of the decade. Before, we were trying to proactively minimize both the frequency and the severity of crashes. I think now with Vision Zero and the safe system approach, the focus is really on the FSI type of collisions. And if we could also reduce or minimize the frequency, that's an added benefit, at least from my point of view. You have to explicitly consider safety of all the road users, which I talked about already. And it's really just a proactive way of putting in mitigating measures before crashes starts happening. Interestingly, I was trained by, well, one of many, Malcolm Bulpitt, who was recognized as kind of the father of the road safety audit back in the 80s. And how he came across road safety audit was he was working in the railway industry before. And the railway engineers actually do a design audit, well, quote unquote audit, before they go out and build and lay railway tracks, after realizing some of the tracks that they build are leading to derailments. So he borrowed that same concept, and when he was working for Kent County Council in the UK, and he was part of the roads group. And then some of the new roads that they built, they had all kinds of crashes happening. So he decided to borrow that idea and apply it to roads. And that's how, and then there's a whole bunch of them that got together in the UK, and then the idea spread, I think, back in the 80s. Unfortunately, Malcolm passed away recently in September. Anyways, a little bit of history there. The last point, a lot of the RSAs that at least I have done would try to look at least the tie-in at both ends of the project or the ends of the project. The problem with that is a lot of the project owners and the designers says, well, this is the limit of construction and that's where we stop. And a lot of issues actually arise from those areas. Anyways, maybe we'll cover those in an example. Next, please. Just remember, it's a proactive tool that tries to minimize crashes before they happen. Remember that prevention is better than cure. So it's like, we try to stay healthy rather than, seeing the doctor and say, hey, give me some pain medication or penicillin or whatever it is. And it's a second look, just focusing on road safety. Basically, you're putting your blinders on. You are aware that there are certain project constraints and whatnot, but your one and only job is to highlight what are the road safety issues. Next, please. It's highly cost effective. Over time, I kind of kept track of some of the projects in terms of the RSA cost compared to the capital cost of the projects. Typically, it's less than 1%. And basically, you could justify doing an RSA if you save one injury crash, and in some cases, maybe one fatality collision, depending on the size of the project. So it's very effective that way. And the beauty of an RSA is it's way easier to change lines on the drawings and kind of finesse your design rather than building it and then going out and say, oh, damn, what have we done now? We have to rip it apart and redo it. And it has happened. So next, please. What an RSA is not, and I think this is where a lot of confusion lies. I have seen some RSA where the auditors just went through a plan checking exercise, basically saying, oh, this doesn't meet standard, that doesn't meet standard. Well, we don't even use the word standards, but we don't meet the minimum design domain and whatnot. But this is not what an RSA is about. It's about looking at it from the user's point of view and what may actually cause a preventable crash. Also, the second thing, it's to all you future road safety auditors, our job is absolutely not to redesign the project. At the end of the day, it's the designer's stamp who goes on that drawing. It's the designer who will be the engineer of record. They are the one who takes on the responsibility and liability for the performance of that facility. We are there to help and point out, some of the things that they could improve in terms of safety. And at the end of the day, the decisions are theirs and the owners. The last point, I'll spend a little bit more time explaining. I have seen some press releases in a province that I shall not name, saying that, the project has been through a road safety audit, therefore it is safe. I think it's a misunderstanding by the communications people or maybe some of our politicians. Just because a project has been through the RSA process, it doesn't confirm that it's safe. A safe project is when there are no motor vehicles, no users on that facility. It basically just goes through a process where we identify issues to the owner and the designer and highlight them and what are the possible mitigating measures for them to implement to make it safer. So just please keep that in mind. Just because it's been audited doesn't mean it's safe. It's like the financial statements from a financial auditor. Just because they audited it, it gives you a higher confidence that that firm's financial statement is somewhat valid, but it doesn't mean that there is no hidden gremlins underneath all those numbers. Next, please. There are some confusion between the road safety audit and an in-surface road safety review. So TAC also published an in-surface road safety review, and I think that's being updated in the upcoming road safety guide to be published by TAC, hopefully in maybe a year or two. So the table itself basically illustrates what are the differences. RSA are typically very proactive, very time constrained. Typically, we are in the critical path of a design process, so we have maybe 2, maybe 3 weeks to produce an RSA, if that. And it usually leads to changes to drawings, whereas in surface road safety review, it's more data-driven by crash data, traffic volumes, and some other traffic engineering measures, more quantitative, and way more time available to do these kind of studies. Next, please. So I'll talk about the 3 parties. There are 3 parties to the road safety audit process. There's the project owner, the designer, and the road safety auditor. So in terms of project owner, obviously they need to show a commitment to safety, make sure that the design team knows that there is an RSA or multiple RSAs to be conducted on the design. Selecting the audit team, that sometimes it depends on the tendering process, but on the design tender build, sometimes the project owner will actually select the audit team. On P3 projects, the RSA team is typically attached to the design builder. Next, please. Oh, actually, sorry. The most important aspect from the project owner's perspective is the last point, is to make sure that you have a response report to the RSA, because sometime down the road, if a serious crash happened, the lawyers comes knocking on the door and they find an RSA report, then they say, well, what have you done about it? And you cannot find it or you did not respond. That's when the lawyer starts opening champagne bottles and saying, aha, we got you. So please be aware. So next one, please. Design team responsibility. Yes, after 20 years, I find a lot of design firms are very committed to safety now, and they're very used to the RSA process. I hope that Ottawa will kind of migrate towards that mentality too. And I find that after a few, people start to understand, and they are not as off-put by the process. They understand that, hey, this is just one of many things that we need to look after, especially when it comes to safety on the road. Again, the most important thing from the design team, from my perspective over the years, is making sure that a response report is prepared, because that goes a long way in terms of addressing the liability for the design firms. Recently, I came across some insurance declaration from medium-sized design firms, and they have to say how many claims they have ongoing, and they actually have about 15. So please be aware. Next, please. RSA team, well, we should organize a kickoff meetings with the designer and the owner just to get a better understanding of the project. Site visit is mandatory. And in this day and age, a lot of times, especially if the sites are remote, Google Street View sometimes can be a good substitute. But I think for the most part, a site visit is very beneficial. It gives you an idea of the lay of the land, what kind of users are present, and how the road users actually behave. Then it's going back to like a workshop setting, and basically, for example, Suzanne and I will sit down. Well, it's kind of hard when she's in Ottawa and I'm in BC, but we will go on Zoom and, put up a drawing and go through it drawing by drawing and the design criteria, any background reports, and then draw our own conclusions in terms of what the safety issues are, and then write a report. The report is fairly brief, I would say, compared to the design report, but it could vary anywhere from 10 pages for typical municipal projects to a major highway undertaking, which is maybe 40, 50 pages, depending on how complex and how many issues we find. And as an optional thing, if there are questions, we can present the findings to the owners or the designers. But as time goes by, I find the last part is I'm doing less and less of it because all these guys and girls out in BC are very familiar with the process, and they know Geoff doesn't really screw up. No, I'm just kidding. Next, please.
This is
So
me
I think
again.
this is Suzanne.
Okay, thanks. So we are going to talk about the process again, because Geoff really did a high level. We'll do a little bit of a deeper dive. So this is the flow chart for the audit process. And there are 6 general steps, which is step 1, startup meeting, step 2, site visit, step 3, audit analysis, step 4, audit report, step 5, findings meeting, optional, and step 6, the response report. And you can see the circle, the square, and the triangle for all of the different people who are involved in each of the different steps. So step 1 is the startup meeting, and as Geoff said, that's where everybody gets together and exchanges information on the design. So the owner will talk about the project objectives, the designer will describe the design status and challenges, and the auditor will describe the audit process and manage expectations. And then everybody agrees to a schedule. And step 2 is this is the site visit for the RSA team. So again, you go out to the site and you observe the traffic conditions, the light conditions, the road user characteristics and interactions. You look at the surrounding land use and project limits. And then we get to step 3, and this also is just the RSA team doing this. I have more slides on this because it's more detailed. So just again, Geoff already mentioned this, but a workshop setting where we brainstorm all of the ideas that we can see. We review all the background reports and design criteria, review and analyze all the design drawings, and then identify safety issues and possible suggestions for consideration for the design team. So the safety issues are design features that may result in a crash occurring or a crash being more severe than necessary. And then to identify the safety issues, there's a safety analysis considers 3 items concurrently: the geometric characteristics in 3D, the operational characteristics, and the user characteristics and their interactions. And so again, the auditors need to visualize a drive, walk, roll, and bike through the design, through all movements and all light and weather conditions. And then for each safety issue, the RSA team provides suggestions that reduce the likely severity of a collision, reduce the likelihood of a collision occurring, and are cost-effective and consistent with the design stage. So the example that I hear Geoff giving all the time is if you get to the detailed design stage, you're doing an audit, and somebody tells you to, the auditor tells you to replace your signalized intersection with a roundabout, that's not what you want to do. So that needs to come much earlier in the consideration. So yeah, step 4, the audit report. Again, this is done by the audit team. So here it's a short report with a focus on describing the safety issues and suggestions. And it should include, the introduction should include the audit team members a brief description of the project, a description of the drawings and reports that are reviewed in the process, and then the date of the site visit. That's like your first page. And then the main part of the report is the point-by-point description of the safety issues and suggestions. So for each safety issue, you briefly describe what is the nature of the safety concern, what kinds of collisions may result, or type of road users be impacted, and what are the mitigating measures to suggest to make it safer. And you'll notice that repeatedly through this presentation, we're using the word suggest. We don't make recommendations. It's just things that the designers could consider. And then the RSA report is a final report. Typically, we do not do draft reports to preserve the independence of the RSA team. So the idea is not that it can go back to the client and they could say, oh, could you please remove this? I don't think this looks good for us. So we don't do that. We present the report and we'll talk about what happens with it next. So the findings meeting, again, optional, but this is an opportunity for the owner and design team to ask any questions where they need clarification or want a better understanding. And then we move to step 6, which is the response report. So when you are doing the response reports, this is the design team and the project owner. So again, as Geoff mentioned, this is a very important closure document for the RSA. You do a point-by-point response to each safety issue raised by the RSA, and you agree or disagree with whether the identified issue is a safety issue. So you are in control of that decision. And it indicates the action to be taken or not taken with justification. And this can be done in a brief letter or memo format. So the response report is prepared jointly by the design team and the owner. Again, brief, can be bullet point. You agree or disagree whether the safety issue is a safety concern, what action or non-action will be taken in response to each RSA suggestion, and a brief explanation. And then it's part of the project record, which is important for liability reasons. So one last time, you agree it's a safety issue and you incorporate the RSA suggestion. You agree it's a safety issue and you incorporate a different solution and provide reasons, or you disagree it's a safety issue and provide reasons. And those are all valid ways on how to respond to each of the issues. Okay, back to Geoff.
Okay, thank you, Suzanne. Yeah, I think we have nailed the response report and how important it is. Okay, just talk about a little bit about the when to do road safety audits. Typically, the bulk of the work is done at the design stage, at the planning feasibility stage. I think in Ottawa terms, that means the EA studies, right? So that's as early as you go in. Let's say you're looking at upgrading an interchange from your typical cloverleaf design to something new and fancy and trendy. This is when they propose maybe a diverging diamond or a roundabout interchange. And when you do your road safety audit, this is the stage where you could say, hey, you know what, maybe this is not such a great idea. How about doing something else instead? Once they have done that and moved on, they go into prelim design or functional design, detailed design. The safety issue starts becoming more and more detailed. You're looking at some of the smaller picture stuff. So if you could imagine, you could start from 30,000 feet up in the air, which is your EA, your planning study, and then you're starting to start your descent when you get down to the pre-opening, sometimes called the post-construction. You are at the ground level, actually looking at the finished product. I know a lot of the provincial agencies like doing the work zone RSAs. There are some benefits to it, but probably not as much as the design stage ones, because the work zones are temporary in nature. And they do change from, week to week, month to month. It's very, very time consuming, and difficult to do. And in my mind, maybe there are better ways of addressing work zone safety more cost effectively, but it is being done in Ontario, Alberta, BC, I think Saskatchewan and Manitoba too. I don't know about Quebec. RSA can be done for an existing road, but it's not recommended because it's basically the Australians went through that exercise when they start introducing RSA in the 90s, and they went nuts on doing audits on in-surface roads. So they did kilometers and kilometers of the highway, arterials and whatnot. They ended up with piles and piles of report that basically highlights the agency's potential liability with no funding, no priority, no programming. They don't know what to do with it. So learning from the Australians, it's probably not a great idea. You could probably do a much better exercise by going through a network screening, finding where your collision-prone locations are, and then doing an in-surface road safety review that targets a particular type of crashes or road uses or certain behavior. So next, please. So this is basically just a visualization of some of the major issues that you could address at the planning feasibility stage. I remember there was one project about 15 years ago out west here. We did a prelim design audit, and it was a very difficult report to write because by outlining each different issues and giving them mitigating measures, me and the other auditor felt that it's still a bad design. So at the end of the day, we actually put up a statement saying that, you know what, you should not put this type of facility on this kind of road and go back and redesign it. They did not, and they actually got 4 engineers to write the response report because 4 is more than 2. And they built it, and after 15 years in operations, it's still fawn on the side for the road authority. So doing it early, it's important if you have a fairly high exposure project, significant project. And as you go down the road, once you get to detailed design pre-opening, there are very, very limited opportunity to make changes to the project. By the time you get to post-construction pre-opening, you're mostly looking at, do you need a barrier, changing some of the signage, pavement marking, maybe getting rid of some of the trees or foliages and whatnot. In terms of the alignment, vertically, horizontally, there's very, very little you could do. Okay, so is this me, Suzanne? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So who should do RSAs? It's in the tech guide. It's basically suggested it should be done always by a team of at least 2 persons. The audit team should have some training in RSAs. I understand that there is some RSA training offered by the Good Roads Association in Ontario from an Australian practitioner. And I think they are actually teaching the Australian version of RSA. It's very, very similar, but there are some nuances. Just be aware. And I think they were kind of marketing it as if you actually have done this course, you are certified as a road safety auditor. Personally, I don't know of any certification process, even after 20 plus years of the Tech RSA guide. So take that with a grain of salt. But It's a good course. It gives you a better understanding. I think it's a 3-day course, and maybe there are future RSA training coming from Canada, and there are some international courses that are being offered by other organizations too. Some of the typical and important experience are in road safety, in traffic engineering, and geometric design. The audit team should actually bring those three essential skills to the table, and an understanding of the needs of various road users. For me, it has been a long learning experience, especially dealing with bicycles, because it has evolved over the 25 years of how you deal with bikes, and every 2 or 3 years, oh, this is new. For example, the green paint, it started, I think I saw it back in the late 90s in Vancouver. They painted a conflict area to like a burgundy red. And I asked one of the Vancouver engineers why, and they said, oh, because that's how Portland is doing it, okay? 3 years down the road, drove through the same road. It's like, oh, it's painted blue now. So gave the same person a call. It's, why is it blue? Oh, Portland is doing it. Okay. And then another few years down the road, now it's green. It's like, oh, who's doing it? Oh, Natco is doing it. Okay. So I don't know, maybe the next time I drive through it, it could be yellow, it could be orange. But the important thing is you still have to understand the road user's needs, regardless of what the standards may be, and have an appreciation of human factors. Now, which brings me to the next point. Once I was driving through an intersection, they just freshly painted a green conflict zone. I asked my wife next to me, I said, do you know what that means? She's like, oh, that means we are driving on some kind of environmentally friendly road. So there you go. Engineers are always trying to be smart, but yeah, sometimes I do question that. So in terms of the Ottawa requirements, it's very interesting. The city actually specifically stated that it needs to be an independent third party, who's not the same firm as the designer, to make sure that there is total arm's length from the design process. I think that is the preferred approach. There are some agencies who would allow, let's say, the same firm but a different office auditing, or different people who are not involved in design auditing their design. Now, there will be times where they may say, well, is this a really good thing to say about our design with the company's name? But anyways, you'll be the judge. For Ottawa, they want auditors who have done at least 5 RSAs in the past 3 years, and at least 3 in the design stages, and participating in at least 1 RSA per year in the past 2 years. So those are fairly low threshold in my mind. I have seen higher requirements, for example, from MTO. I think for road safety audit team leader, they want somebody with 20 years experience, and I can't remember what the rest is. So depending on the project, you may actually want to change those requirements and the complex. If it's let's say it's a DDI project, you may want some fairly experienced road safety auditor to do the audit. Whereas if you're just doing a typical arterial widening or putting in a new signal, maybe you could get a less experienced RSA team. Anyways, next, please. So these are some of the core skill set. Like I said, road safety, traffic, and design. And you could always supplement your team if required. I know MTO always asks for a human factors expert on some of the more complicated projects. For example, sometimes there are some very convoluted and complex AT design. You may get a really good bicycle design person on board. Low volume roads, there are some specialists out there who are more familiar with how low volume roads are designed, especially out west here. We have a lot of forestry roads that are located in very, very steep terrain. The first time I saw one, I think there was one that was over 20% grade. So I'm like, okay, who's going to drive that truck down that grade? But anyways, so those are some of the desired skills. You could always supplement your team besides the two who knows about road safety, traffic, and geometric design. But I think for the majority of the time, those core skill sets serves the RSA pretty well. So back to Suzanne, or questions. Is it questions?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we have 13 minutes left. Do we want to do questions now, or do we want to go to the examples?
We have 2 questions now, so maybe we can do them and then go to the examples.
Okay.
So the first one says, I find that in spite of industry's collective learnings from RSAs over the past 27 years in Canada, that most of the same issues keep coming up. Why do you think that is? Is there a risk that RSAs have contributed to designers not taking ownership of safety, i.e., they are willing to make more safety compromises because they think the RSA will catch it?
Good question.
I think in my experience, I find the design has actually improved in terms of how the designer deal with safety for the most part. And I find a lot of, especially with some of the designers that I worked with over the years, I find that the design has actually improved. Now, sometimes you do have the occasional one where there is a new idea or new type of facility. Then that's where you actually have a lot of new safety issues. But I find that especially in the West Coast, they've done a really good job in terms of improving the safety of the design. And I think because of the popularity of Safe System and Vision Zero, I think people are more conscious of road safety too. Yes, there are the occasional black sheep that may, oh, you know what, we'll just do, and let's see if the audit team will catch it. But no, personally, I don't see that as a trend, actually.
Okay, we'll move to the next one. We see more requirements and calls that human factors experts are part of the RSA team. Can you please comment on the importance of human factors experts and your experience on some projects having human factor member as part of the RSA team?
Suzanne, you want me to go or you?
I haven't been on an audit team with a human factors specialist. Yeah.
I've been on a few. It depends on the human factors expert. I think if deployed in the right environment, they bring something to the table. Yes, absolutely. I think for your typical, say, widening or highway expansion project or that type of project, they may not. But let's say if it's a very complicated series of interchanges, there are some non-typical elements. I'm talking about freeway design. They do bring a lot to the table in terms of decision, the size of the fonts, where they put the guide signings and whatnot. But at the same time, over time, I think more and more people are relying on the car talking to them. It's like, in 200 meters, turn right. So in my mind, over time, that may actually diminish. Now, where I think a human factors expert, but at the same time, depending on the expert, is in some of the active transportation projects. I actually drove into Vancouver a couple of years ago during COVID, into an area that I thought I was familiar with, and then they completely redesigned it with some new bike facility. And me, as trained as a traffic and safety engineer, I didn't know what to do. I actually stopped. It's like, oh, what shall I do? Luckily, it was during COVID and there weren't too many traffic. So yes, it all depends on the project. And it will take, the project owner to realize, oh, you know what, it's good to have a human factors expert on the job. As the RSA team, it's very difficult to actually push upwards and say, hey, you know what, you could benefit from a human factors expert because they are, no, typically they don't have a lot of budget to spend on an RSA, right?
Thank you. We have 3 more, but maybe we can jump to the examples, and if we have time, we do them. Otherwise, we'll email the questions to you.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, I see one that I want to answer from Eric. Are either of you aware of any cases where members of an RSA team have been found liable in the litigation case? For me, no, Eric. And I do buy my liability insurance every year.
I haven't been involved in anything either, but yeah. Personally liable? I don't know. Interesting.
Okay. Suzanne,
Okay.
your DDI.
Oh, I didn't start with the, should I start with the DDI
You wanted
one?
to start with that, yes.
Okay. So here's well, I think we were sort of hoping to make this a little bit interactive. I can't see anything except my screen, so I don't know if people are how people are engaging, but this is a drawing that we received, and the environment it's a interchange off of major highway. There is this area right here is truck parking, so this is the off ramp. That's the eastbound off ramp, and then there's the access to the truck parking facility. And then up here, over here is the off ramp from the westbound.
Sorry, Suzanne, we are not seeing your pointer if you are using
Oh,
it.
I see. Okay. Okay. You can't see the pointer. Okay. Yeah. So basically, just looking for anybody's input on what they see here, and recognizing that this is a drawing that was brought forward to be audited. Is anybody interested in commenting?
It's got a lot of green.
Not you, somebody else.
No.
Sorry. Okay. Well, let's. I'm not sure how easy it is to get people engaged in this setting, but yeah. So if you note, that's the green is a on-road cycling facility. There is also a MUP on the side of the road on both sides, and also to note that because this is an interchange, there is also a vertical curve involved here, and I think there's a grade of between 5 and 6% going down towards the bottom of the page. So yeah, I guess one of the recommendations that we would put forward on this is to get rid of that hanging bike lane, because it is going through the middle of a weave where there will be a lot of trucks and a lot of trucks weaving, and there is both a horizontal and vertical curve here, so visibility will also be poor. Also, because of the grade in the downhill direction, cyclists could be going quite fast. So yeah, that's one of the examples. Are there any comments? Anybody interested in saying anything? Any questions? No?
The cyclist has to be really brave.
Yeah.
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 I just want to say, if you want to comment, you can unmute your mic at this point and comment.
One of the things when the designer was explaining it to us was that that they had heard from the bicycle advocacy group that they really didn't want to be reliant on maps, so they wanted to be able to ride on the street as well. So this is why this was incorporated into the design.
Yeah, we have Bennett, Robin Bennett hands up, so you can comment, Bennett, Robin.
Yeah, hi, thanks for using this example, Suzanne. I just find it hard to get my head around this. I should just clarify, I work with bicycle planning. It's hard to get your head around this. You can't see the full context, but I do have a couple of comments. And the first one I would start with is that it's not the way we go nowadays. We have a protected bike lane instead of just a painted one. But since you have moving vehicles crossing it, you can't really do that. But I just want to make a quick comment that if there are people riding bicycles in this part of the city, wherever it is, what you show there might encourage people to ride there that wouldn't, but typically it would be people who are pretty well trained. You won't find unskilled cyclists using a facility like this. And the fact that you've got marked demarcated space for the bicycles, I think would make it a lot safer. If I'm not going to say it's safe, but that what you show there as opposed to having nothing, it's a big difference. So other than that, and I don't have any other comments.
Thanks, Robin. Should we go on to another example?
Yes.
Yeah.
Suzanne, can you find the hump?
The
You know where? Yeah, the one with the 3 pictures. No, not. Oh, well, not this one.
Okay, the 3-1. The 3-1.
Yes.
This one. Oh, this one.
So,
Yes.
This one. Okay. So this is a post opening RSA. It's a rural intersection. It's in BC, and it's a typical T intersection. So you could see each photo corresponds to the location where the picture was taken. So when you're doing the design, which you could see in the background, you would think, oh, okay, you know what? There's good intersection sight distance. It meets all the tag minimum intersection distance, left turn, right turn, all the turns. And when we went out there, what happened was the contractor has decided to dump all the excesses onto one of the corners of the intersection. So if you look at the middle photo and the photo to the right, there is this little mound of dirt with vegetation on it, which has essentially blocked your sight distance for the drivers on the main line, as well as for people who are coming out of this minor road intersection. So sometimes it's important to actually go out to do a post-construction / pre-opening stage RSA.
Yeah. Thank you, Geoff. We are at time now. We have 2 questions, but I think I'll email them to you with that's if Alex and Sandra, you're okay with me to email the questions, and Geoff and Suzanne will get back to you. But thank you very much, Suzanne and Geoff. This was very insightful, and I hope everyone enjoyed it as much as I did.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you.